Great to have you here, and if you want to keep it casual here, stay wherever you like.
I guess I'll keep it casual.
I think most of you know Adam. I know many of you know him personally, but a quick round of applause for Adam Bain from Twitter.
Well, that was good to get applause because I haven't even done anything yet, so we'll see you towards the end. As Drew mentioned, this is actually, we've been in a quiet period for an extended period of time, so this is the first time I actually get to speak. So, in fact, because of the transaction, we have all kinds of really neat and interesting people at the company, investor relations, who actually now goes through all of our presentations. So the presentation that I was going to give today was this, which has been thoroughly scrubbed. Drew, you made it through, actually, and that's basically it. So I actually didn't show them this presentation today, so feel free to tweet away. My @handle is @AdamBain. Just be kind. So Drew said, bring research. Talk to me about what consumers are doing on this platform or in the world. And so I brought what I think is to be the preeminent study of human behavior right now with inside of digital, which is this. You may need some sound there.
Another driveway here. We're going to kind of maneuver around and see if we can get another shot of him.
That's how addicted we are to mobile, is that even somebody on Twitter and does not even see the bear around the corner. So all the things that I'm going to show you today is actually driven by this behavior, that we are so focused on our mobile device, that mobile actually has changed everything about behavior that is driving interesting disruption across the board. The earlier session around disruption, not withheld. So what you're going to hear today, I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 main concepts. One, that Twitter is a social soundtrack for life in the moment. Okay? 2, that Twitter is actually a force multiplier or an amplification device for amazing content. And 3, just to the earlier point around disruption, Twitter did something maybe extremely disruptive, which is if you go up and down Silicon Valley, as many of you do, you'll find that everybody here in the Valley wants to disrupt content and disrupt media. And so Twitter has an interesting twist, which is, and maybe more disruptive, which is instead of disrupting media, what if we could actually help media by amplifying content in that way? So I'm going to take you through the thought process around it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about TV and some of the work that we've done on TV, but you can use this as a context for a broader sense. So TV, when you think about TV, a broadcast TV experience is a synchronous experience, meaning that we all see the same content at the same time. And Twitter, you can think about it as a more social medium, so people are having conversations. The interesting thing is exploring the crossover between the two. A broadcast or a synchronous experience with a more social experience. How do the two fit together? So before I talk about Twitter, I want to take a step back and look at synchronous experiences times social experiences in the real world. So let's look at the original broadcast experience, a sunset. Okay, when you think about a sunset, sunset is truly a synchronous experience. We all sit around. If you're watching the sunset with somebody, you can actually admire pieces in the sky or the sun actually setting, and you actually can talk about it as it happens. Okay, so it's the interesting crossover between this synchronous broadcast experience that people are experiencing and also social. In fact, the social context is interesting because it defines not just what we talk about, but how we talk about it. So you ask, like, why is that? Well, part of it is, it actually has to do with how our brains are wired. So two concepts that I want to talk about in psychology that's going to bake into the things that we're doing at Twitter. Number 1, memory, the human mind. So meet Hermann Ebbinghaus, who at the turn of the century did a lot of research and studies. One of the things that he researched was the human mind, and actually gave people lists of information and asked them to memorize those lists and then actually repeat it back. And what he found pretty quickly is that lo and behold, memory fades really, really fast. So the moment you say something or the moment you give somebody a list to memorize, less than a minute later, they have near 100% recall. Okay? 63 minutes later, they've forgotten most of it, almost half of it. So then it continues on down. In fact, when you think about the sunset example, you're sitting with somebody, you actually watch the sunset. When it happens, you have immediate recall. When the sun goes down, 63 minutes later, you've actually forgotten a bunch about that as it comes through. The second concept within psychology is attention. Okay? So there's a great study that was done in 1969 by Stanley Milgram. You probably have heard of him. He's the researcher that studied the 6 degrees of separation concept. And Milgram had this concept around attention, which is this. Attention is driven by visible crowds. And he studied this in a really interesting way. He got a bunch of people together in a New York street corner who were the stimulus, and they simply stood up and looked up at a skyscraper. And what they looked to do is see if anybody would stop and actually look up. It got even more interesting. He found that when some of them pointed, it actually increased. And what he found is that the probability of people looking up, when he took one person and asked them to look up, there was a 40% chance that a crowd walking by would stop and look to see what the other person's looking at. You go to 2 people, it actually jumps up to 50, 3 people, it jumps up to 60, and just 5 people, you've got an 80% chance of driving their attention. Okay, so memory and attention, 2 interesting concepts. I'm going to use those. I want you to put those in memory because I'm going to access them in a little bit. We'll see whether your 60% recall is any good. So I want to shift to Twitter. Twitter's got 3 elements that make it interesting. It's live, public, and conversational. So live, we used to think about it as real time, but it truly is live. So when things happen in the real world, people talk about it on the platform. Public, it's not a private relationship that we have. It actually happens all out in public. In some ways, we're all witnesses to what unfolds on the platform. And conversational. That's part of the great thing about the platform is we're not just all witnesses, but we're witnesses to these great conversations that are happening between people, and we get to see that play out. So we've been increasingly thinking about what we're building as a social soundtrack to life in the moment. So let's look at some of the data that we see. So this is data about tweets in New York City. It's a graph. The darker the color of the ink, the more tweets per minute there are coming through the platform. The lighter the ink, the less there are. And when you look at it, you see it actually kind of makes sense. This is a pattern of most US cities, what their tweet data looks like. So you can see early in the morning when we're all sleeping, most of us aren't tweeting. You wake up and then begin your day. You can see it gets a little bit darker. Interestingly, prime time, if you will, is also where there's the most amount of tweet activity. So kind of interesting. You can actually see this social soundtrack, if you will, through the data of a city. So I'm going to take you to a different city, and you actually see something slightly different. You see 2 things. You see a kind of break in the data between July and August, and you can kind of see 2 interesting bands that are there. So welcome to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And the box there is obviously Ramadan. And the 2 are social broadcast moments, right? Sunrise and sunset, so moments of prayer when everybody is together and they're obviously not tweeting. In fact, when you look city by city by city, you can actually see this phenomenon through the data. You can actually see the sun shining through, if you will, through the Twitter activity and Twitter data. It's these broadcast moments times the social moments. And again, these are tweets containing just the word sunset. So you can actually see people sharing this one broadcast concept. So let's talk about soundtracks for a minute. Soundtracks are interesting. When they first came out, people were really worried that they were going to cannibalize the silent film. And then you had Charlie Chaplin, who, through innovation, through the music and the soundtrack that came through, people realized that the soundtrack actually enhanced the story. Right? I don't know that you could watch E.T. without really experiencing the soundtrack. Jaws, without the soundtrack, is a silly little robotic fish in the water. With the soundtrack, it actually makes people afraid to go into the water. So I'll show you what this looks like played out. So this is an example of a social soundtrack moment in my living room. How many people have seen this before? Have seen Skywire? Only a couple. So Skywire was a live television broadcast put on by the Discovery Channel. In their wisdom, they decided to string a rope across one of the Grand Canyons and had Nick Lewinda, home to the Flying Willinda brothers. His grandfather actually attempted to do the same thing and actually fell off the wire and died. And Discovery decided to do this live on TV in terms of a broadcast. You can see also a Twitter hashtag was displayed on the screen the entire time. So let me show you what I mean by social soundtrack. On TV, if you experienced the TV broadcast live, this is what you saw. You probably need sound again, too.
Thank you, Jesus, for this beautiful view. How's that dust on there right now? Oh, it's all right. Okay. Praise you, God. Praise you, Jesus.
So that's what you saw on TV. I won't keep you in guessing. He actually made it all the way through across the live. There were about 1 million tweets that were generated using the hashtag Skywire. So the social soundtrack coming through while the live broadcast was going on. And just to give you a sense, a flavor of what was coming through, as I was sitting home watching this on TV, I also had my mobile phone on my lap, and while I was watching, I was consuming tweets and also tweeting with the word Skywire about what I was watching. Again, broadcast, medium, social medium combining. And I saw things like this, one from ESPN. Skywire is a victory for courage, perseverance, and dad jeans. In fact, dad jeans is interesting. It actually, I was so focused on the canyon and the action that I didn't even realize his jeans, but this became a huge thing that people were talking about. This next one from a really well-known comedian, Seth Meyers, who said, "Thank you, Jeanses." Obviously. So again, social conversation happening in real time. The soundtrack kicking in real time. Or this one even from a brand, denim, preferred by cowboys, rock stars, and Nick Lewinda. Hashtag Skywire. So again, the social soundtrack while the live event was actually playing out. So what I want to talk a little bit about are these live and televised moments. And I'll give you a really good example of this playing out for a television broadcast and what this means. I'm going to show you some data from the TV show Walking Dead. And before I do, you should understand all the visualizations that I'm going to show you actually are based on live Twitter data. We did an acquisition of a company called Bluefin Labs about a year ago, and part of the technology that they had built actually was a way to ingest Twitter data and display it visually. So while the on-screen visuals will look nice, keep in mind that actually it's real Twitter data that's being visualized, okay? So somebody comes in and actually watches The Walking Dead. We bring in the audience, and the audience is watching The Walking Dead live as it premieres. And at one point inside of the broadcast, there's a user who was doing what I was doing during Skywire, which is watching with their phone or tablet, and tweets out this: "Shoot him, Rick, just shoot him." And actually, that was a feeling that most of the people in the audience had. So let me show you what we saw then on our ends. This is sort of the life of a tweet, if you will. That "shoot him, Rick, just shoot him" is delivered the moment that somebody tweets it out. And is delivered just as the series began, just after 9. It's one impression, essentially, one tweet impression that's delivered to a user when the user logs in and pulls their timeline. Make sense? So if you play it through, you see that as we go through the broadcast, as people begin to log in and see that "shoot 'em, Rick, just shoot 'em," they're actually able to see that content through. Okay? And that gray window is actually the broadcast window between 9 and 10. But there's also some people that come in outside of the TV window and experience that content after the TV show is over, and they're still talking about a bit of it. But you can see a lot of it actually happens within inside of the gray. So let me rewind it and actually now give you a picture of just 1% of the conversations for The Walking Dead. So here's what it looks like when The Walking Dead is going on live and all of the conversations about that show and program. There were 11.5 million viewers this day, TV viewers, according to Nielsen, that actually watched this program. And what we're able to do is actually sum up all of those conversations and peer into the data. And there's some really interesting features about what we're able to see. So the first is you can see a bunch of the conversations actually happen live inside of that viewing window from 9 to 10. To be specific, there were 15 million impressions of conversations and 3.2 million people who actually were having conversations about what they were watching. Obviously, this is just in the US. And I mentioned this idea around live reach. It's something, again, I want you to hold in memory because I think it's something unique and interesting about the platform, which is this concept of live, being able to reach someone live as a broadcast is going on. It's unique. So Nielsen actually has been studying this behavior for the last year. They actually came out 2 months ago with a study that proved causation. So the more that people experience tweets or even tweet themselves about the content on TV, it actually drives ratings. So it actually drives people to tune in. And they also have launched what they're calling the Nielsen Twitter TV rating. And essentially, this is a rating for every single Nielsen rated show. If you think about how we've always looked at TV, it's been along one axis, reach, gross rating point or target rating point. What the NTTR is a different axis, one of engagement for TV, as defined exclusively by tweets and Twitter activity, and it's meant to overlay on top of each other. Right? So now you've got a great Harvard Business School 4 blocker, things that are high reach but also high engagement, or things that are a little bit lower reach but also equally high engagement, or the money ball maybe for TV. What are things where if you have exactly two identically Nielsen rated shows, but then when you pivot them on its axis, you're able to see one has dramatically more engagement than the other. Shouldn't the broadcast content provider know about that? Shouldn't the marketer know about that? So I'll show you a view of what this actually looks like. They pivot on two interesting axes. One is what's the unique audience that was exposed to the tweets on the left-hand side. You're actually able to see for this program there was 15,000 unique authors of tweets, authoring 34,000 tweets. You're able to see the impressions on the right-hand side and how many, what the audience were for those impressions, and also the impressions per tweet. So this is available now for every Nielsen partner who wants to bring this data in. So, okay, this concept of live reach, it makes sense. What do we do with it? I've hopefully convinced you that there's a social soundtrack. What can we do with it? What we've done is we've built on two things using that as a framework, and I'm going to show you those, which I think is a new level of what we think about as cross-modal communication. So let me talk about the first one. This is a service that we provide to content providers, to broadcast partners. We do it in TV, but we also do it in print and other medium. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing on the TV space in terms of video distribution. So I'm going to bring back in the audience and talk about something that we've done with, say, ESPN. You are watching a program, again, like The Walking Dead, in case this one is The Walking Dead because it was the finals and the Celtics were in the finals. No, I'm just kidding. You see, again, same thing that we saw before, which is the content is actually delivered in real time live as people are watching the program. Sports content especially, there's this moment of when a moment happens on TV that you want to capture that piece. Now, here's the interesting thing. What happens if somebody's not watching the program and they're getting tweets delivered to them about the program? Is there something interesting to do there? The answer, we think, is yes, which is we've launched a service with content providers to help them find those people that are not watching their programs and actually deliver them a signal to go tune in to the program. And here's essentially how it works. So this person in red that you're about to see, this person is not watching the program, but they saw a tweet delivered to them from somebody inside of their stream. And we've established now a bridge between ESPN and that person to actually get content delivered to them. And that content actually now isn't just 140 characters, but tweets can be combined with media, almost like the tweet now is a payload delivery system. And the media can be from that exact moment. Okay? So again, just playing this through of how one of the broadcasts looked like. This is a good example for people that weren't watching the program and what they're actually able to see. So the blue is what we just talked about, the social soundtrack. The red is something new, something we call Twitter Amplify, so allowing those broadcast partners to reach those people. So let me show you what it looks like as a consumer. So it used to be the case, for example, during last year's March Madness, you would just see this thing. That FGCU alley-oop was just plain ridiculous. And now you actually get the content delivered. That moment that's there. And actually, the sign that we've done this right is great content, that great broadcast moment, combined with that great social moment. You see things like this. Just watch this 4 times on my phone. Or this during last year's NBA Finals. We worked with the NBA to bring content. It used to be the case that you would just see LeBron took off on Jason Terry, oh my God, but now you actually see that moment.
Wade from behind takes it away. Chalmers, James!
So this is live as the game's going on as well. So this is the first time that each one of the leagues actually allowed this to happen, this content to actually be digitally distributed in this way. Same thing. Interesting thing about this, the advantage on a social context plus a broadcast context is the power of the retweet. So you can see over 2,700 people retweeting this moment as it's going on. And again, if I'm not watching the program, I get a message, my pocket buzzes that there's some really interesting and compelling content there for me. We've done this across all of sports, so we were the first to do this with the NFL. So we have live highlights that happen on Thursday nights during the NFL games.
On 3rd and goal.
This is a good moment that even the cameraman was faked out. For those that remember, this is Peyton Manning doing a bootleg for a touchdown. There was something interesting there as well in terms of the content. I don't know if you saw it, but at the very beginning there was a 6-second ad that rolled before the content. So one of the other things that we're doing is we're bringing a monetization vehicle for the broadcast partner, and something we and the broadcast partners bring out to market together. 6-second is interesting because it's obviously the length of Vine, our video platform. It also is the perfect length if we've got a 15 or a 30-second piece of highlight content. Trying to do a 30-second ad against a 15-second piece of highlight content probably doesn't work so well. It also happens to be before, on a true view video, for example, on YouTube, the length of time before the skip button comes up. So we actually think a lot of people are going to start optimizing content around that 6-second view. And it doesn't just work for sports. So we've expanded it out to live events. For example, this is during the VMAs. I'm not going to show you the Miley Cyrus content. I am going to show you just the beginning of Bruno Mars. So again, while the moment that this happened on TV, it also happened digitally through your phone or tablet. So we've launched this program with actually 40 different content providers, all premium content providers across the board, a bunch here in the US, but we've actually expanded this internationally as well. So Globosat in Brazil, TV Asahi in Japan, and the like. It's not just content that's coming through. We've also now created a really easy way that people can take action. So we announced a deal with Comcast and NBC to launch what they call the See It technology. And essentially for content that comes up either on your phone or tablet, if it's about a TV program, and you've authenticated into Twitter with your Comcast credentials, you see a little button that comes up that says See It. As a consumer, if you touch your phone, a mini window comes up and gives you 3 choices. One is Remind Me. So make my pocket buzz because the show's coming up and I don't want to forget about it. 2 is record. So I'm away, I'm out having dinner, but I really want to see the voice. And so from my from a tweet. Essentially, I can hit it right down to my DVR and record. Or more interestingly, I'm actually surfing Twitter, and I have the TV on a different channel. There's also a button that says Watch, which actually tunes your DVR in your living room or wherever your TV happens to be to the program that's there with inside of the Twitter interface. So that's called the See It functionality. The other piece that we also have launched is something called lead gen cards. And essentially, this is both for marketers but also broadcast partners. And you can see, when you sign up for Twitter, you give your username, and those are great credentials that broadcast partners then can access in one button. So if the new DVD or electronic version of the episode is available, if you wanted to go drive demand before it's actually out with inside of any of the stores, you can create this button. When a user clicks sign up now, it actually asks them for permission and then sends the email address that they've signed up for Twitter out to the partner. It's really interesting because when you think about lead generation in general, it's a really tough platform to actually drive credentials through on mobile. This, we think, helps solve a really big problem. Okay, so let me switch gears and talk really quickly about what we're doing then for marketers. Using that same context, this is called TV ad targeting. I'm going to bring back in our audience here, but in this case, I'm going to take it on a different level. So this is, on one axis, all of the TV programs that are happening. On the other axis are the people themselves. And what we can do is actually establish the link between these people through tweets, people that are tweeting about or consuming tweets about what's happening on TV. And so we also not only know that they're talking about TV, we also know the reach of those tweets. So we know that somebody's talking about that tweet and it landed at their friend or neighbor. And we're also able to see one other axis, which is on TV, there's also television commercials, so messages or video moments from brands. And so what we're also able to do through the Bluefin technology is actually understand anytime a marketer is running a commercial on TV. So I'm going to show you an example. This is a Volkswagen commercial, a spot. We're actually able to listen to live TV and identify that this specific spot is running. And we actually know that it ran at a certain moment with inside of, say, Glee. And then we're also able to look at all the tweets about Glee. Or even, to some degree, tweets about that specific ad. And then what we're able to do now for Volkswagen is allow them to essentially message, or in some cases remarket, those consumers that saw their message. When you think about retargeting, it's interesting. Retargeting's been around in digital for a really long time. This is the first time we think that where there's analog to digital retargeting, not just digital to digital. And if you know anything about TV, you know that most people don't just run one spot in one moment on one show. They actually run multiple spots across multiple different channels and multiple different times a day. So what the system actually does is, just if the marketer says yes, even without getting the TV schedule from the agency or the marketer, we can essentially run this at scale in real time as people are either watching those programs or watching those ads. So you see it happen in things like this. Oh my God, he did not just show the Oreo example. Yes, I did. Power out, no problem. So we've seen this over and over and over again. I want to give you a different perspective on why people are doing moments like this on TV and Twitter. There's a great story that came out the moment that Oreo, the next issue of Wired, the moment that Oreo moment happened, and it said this: did this sell more Oreos? Hard to tell, but it definitely makes the brand seem more clever, more interesting, and sharp. In terms of brand equity, this is effective, if not more effective, than showing another Super Bowl ad. Wow, that's incredible. But there was this one thing, hard to tell. Did this sell more Oreos? Hard to tell. Well, I actually want to introduce you to somebody who knows. So this is Bain Bao. He's the VP of Global Media and Consumer Engagement at Mondelez. Mondelez is the parent company for Oreo. We've been doing a bunch of work with Bain and his team for the last year across the board on Twitter and TV. I want you to hear in his own words why he's actually doing some of these things in terms of hashtags on TV or replicating that dunk in the dark moment. So here's Bain.
We firmly believe as an organization that Twitter allows us to transform our connection with consumers, that allow us to build stories that it took a brand like Oreo 100 years to build. We are now able to build that at the pace and the speed unprecedented. And it also allows a cookie, a simple cookie, to have a point of view on culture that shapes and defines who we will be as a brand. Twitter allows us to be a part of a cultural statement on a daily basis. What's great is that, and this is, I think, the most important piece to tell you, is that the stuff works. It works in ways that I never expected it to. So, for example, what we see is twice the effectiveness of our television. I think we're going to actually see even more as we continue to get better at this when we run Twitter or when we participate in conversation on Twitter alongside of our TV. So I think the future of storytelling is ahead of us, and for us, the partner that sees, has the ability to help us seize that moment the most happens to be Twitter.
So that's really interesting. He talked about moments, and he also talked about one other thing, which is not just increasing the effectiveness of digital. There's a lot of people who can do that. He talked about doubling the effectiveness of his TV. In fact, when he came to this event that we threw, he talked about 3 metrics that they track, doing 20% brand lift with Cadbury when they do Twitter and TV together, 10% lift in sales for Oreo when they do Twitter and TV together, and a 2 times lift in TV ad effectiveness when they do Twitter and TV together. That matches what we see on the back end. We've been working with a company called Delegates to actually connect the dots between somebody either tweeting or consuming tweets actually about a brand, and then watching to see what happens in store and connecting the dots. So it is the case for now about over 30 CPG studies that we've done. When somebody's just exposed to messages from marketers on the Twitter platform, they see 8% lift in sales. They actually engage with any of those messages. It's a 12% lift in in-store sales. And most interestingly, during the study period, if you follow a brand during that study period, we see a 29% lift in sales. And the great thing about this data is it's based on frequent shopper swipes of their cards. So we're actually able to control for they weren't following the brand, they weren't even purchasing this brand or family of brand products before, and then during the study period, it actually changed that arc. And there's actually really interesting things that I think on the creative side that can be done. Here's one really good example that happened in the UK. This is an example about from Fox debuting the movie Prometheus. And they did it with a Twitter hashtag that everybody has, I'm sure, seen. But instead of putting a Twitter hashtag at the very end of the spot that everybody's doing, they decided to do it on the lower third the entire time that the program was running. And they didn't choose hashtag Fox or hashtag Prometheus. They chose this. Hashtag, are you seeing this? So a call to action. Again, live broadcast moment with a call to action to drive you to that social experience. Okay? That was a 30-second spot that ran on TV. The TV spot ran. It went back to the TV program. This was Homeland. It cut back to in the UK. At the very next commercial break, something really interesting happened, which is it was Prometheus again, and there was an announcer that came on that said, everybody in the UK can't wait to see Prometheus. Here's what you're tweeting about it, and actually brought live tweets onto screen that were composed, merely 10 minutes before from that call to action. So it's a really good example, probably one of the first examples of real-time social proof that people were excited to go see a movie and a product launch. Now there's something interesting there, right? So this concept around time, let's think about that for a minute. This was happening live. What is it about time, whether it's real time or whether it's live, that's either happening on Twitter or on the broadcast side? So I want to contrast 2 different ways of viewing video content as a really good example. On one, you have a piece of video that's actually delivered, but it's actually delivered on a time-shifted matter, and another one that's delivered synchronously, so one that's delivered as a broadcast medium. On both of these examples, I'm using 100 people in the audience, so I've controlled for mass. Certainly mass and reach and scale matter, but I think there's something beyond just mass and reach. So let's explore a little bit of that. And to that, we're going to go to the study of physics. And for those that remember Isaac Newton's second law, F equals ma, so force of a physical object is equal to the mass of that object times the acceleration. You combine mass and acceleration together, you get force. So the question is, can we stretch this equation a bit to apply to media, which is the force of that media is equal to the mass, the scale, the reach, but also times the social acceleration. And so to prove that out, I'm going to bring in those 2 things that I talked about in the beginning. memory fades fast, and attention can be driven by the visible crowd. And let's go look at the content again. In this case, I'm actually going to use a piece of on-demand content. So this is using House of Cards. It's available on Netflix so that people can actually just watch on demand anytime they please. Looking at the Twitter data, we certainly see people having a conversation. And when they're watching, it's in memory right away. And then it does as we expected, which is memory fades. And then the next person comes on to Netflix and actually watches that content. Same thing. It's in memory right away, and then according to the law, memory fades. And so what's interesting about this is when we go and peel back and look at all of the data around both mass and scale, we do see a lot of people watching that content. And some of them actually are tweeting about it, but they're tweeting with one specific message. I'm about to watch this program. Right? So it's basically saying, sharing that like, hey, I'm about to sit down and watch this program. But you can see not a lot of connections between the audience. So I'm going to contrast that with another show that's actually on the broadcast side. This show is Scandal, which is a pretty active Twitter, has a pretty active Twitter following. And if we look at the data in this way, again, we see all of the viewers and broadcast partners or consumers around it. Same thing, you've got all these people who are collectively experiencing it near real time or near live. And so it holds in memory. They're describing what they're watching and seeing. And certainly the memory fades, but it all fades together at the same time. And then using the Milgram effect, if somebody's not paying attention, but they're going to hear the roar of the crowd, it only takes a couple people, 5 people or less, to actually steer their attention to tune to the television program. And if you back out and look at just for not just Scandal, but if you look at across the board, all of the conversations, this is data from all the conversations that are happening on TV, you get a pretty interesting picture of both people that are discovering that content, people that are sharing that content, people that have attention at the same moment and memory of the same moment. The interesting thing is it happens across all genres, whether it be drama, whether it be sports, where they're experiencing this and sharing it at the same time, whether it be in reality programming, whether it be in comedies, where we're all laughing together, whether it be in highly produced, almost movie-like content, where we watch together, or in some cases are worried that we're going to spoil the plot moment for each other with that specific show. There's something really fascinating about this concept of driving together the content in real time. And so I've talked a lot about TV, but now I want to step back and just generalize it, which is if you think about this across all forms of content, it works for live events, concerts, a physical game where you're actually there watching, experiencing it. We see the same thing happening. And so if you don't believe that this phenomena is working, the combination between broadcast and social experience, all you need to do is actually look at the data to see which platform it's happening on. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.